Okay, we're Tzadik Vav Mud Aleph, 96a. We discussed, the Gemara talked about angels. It's the angel which struck Nebuchadnezzar, the army of Nebuchadnezzar. We also mentioned Avraham Avinu fighting the four kings. So apropos to that, the Gemara is going to make a statement with regard to Avraham and the angel that helped him fight the four kings. Then the Gemara is going to make a statement that seems, at least on the surface, to be kind of transplanted here, and what exactly the Gemara means with this is a discussion amongst the commentaries, and we'll address that a bit. Rashi himself gives two versions. And then the Gemara is going to get back to Nebuchadnezzar and not his success. Well, first his predecessors and then his successors. I'm sorry, the Gemara is going to get to Nebuchadnezzar and his successors. The preceding Nebuchadnezzar's success in destroying the temple, and then the events surrounding that. Okay. So first, Avraham Avinu and the four kings and the angel. So the line begins with the word V'gomer. We're still in the narrow set of lines, about a third way down from the top of the page. The first word is V'gomer, Vav Gimel Vav, apostrophe, and then there's a little Gimel, which is Vayachalek. Yeah?
V'gomer?
Yeah, V'gomer. That's abbreviation for V'gomer, which means etc. Concluding the previous verse from yesterday, and then new verse.
Amar?
Vayachalek Alehem. Right above Amar.
Yeah, okay, right above.
Okay. So this verse, the Gemara is about to quote, is in Bereshis, and it talks about Avram pursuing the four kings, and then it says, Vayachalek Alehem Laila, he divided on them, which means he came upon them in division, which means he came upon them in opposition to them, if you will. Laila at night, Huva Avadav, he and his servants, he and Eliezer, Vayakam, and he struck them. So the word Laila, night, seems a bit more misplaced. If it was at night, it would be Vahi Balayla, and it was at night, and he hit them, or Vayachalek Alehem Balaylahu, on that night he met them. But the placement of the word Laila without a prefix or a suffix makes it a little, makes it wanting and requiring explanation. And therefore, Amar Bechon says that, read the verse like this: Vayachalek Alehem Laila, and Laila, identifying a something, met them, meaning not that they met them at night, but rather take the name Laila and make it a name of an angel, and Laila, an angel called Laila, met them with Avram and Eliezer, met the four kings, and this angel helped Avram and Eliezer be successful, as Rabbi Yochanan says. That angel, Avram, which came to Avram's aid in fighting the kings, Laila Shmoy, is called Laila. How do we know there's an angel called Laila? Shnemar, as the verse reads in Iyov, and Iyov says, V'halayla Amar, and Laila says, Hoida Gever, a man-child was born. So Laila is speaking, even though, again, the verse there could mean, and the night says, as if like it happened that night. But again, that language is strange. Night doesn't speak. But if Laila is a name, then it would make sense. So both here and there it's a name. Laila is speaking and saying there's a man-child born in Iyov, and here Laila met them at that juncture and helped Avram fight these kings.
Wouldn't it be a simpler explanation to interpret it poetically?
On the simple level, that's probably true.
The night met them.
Yeah.
The night began to envelop them.
On the simple reading, it's probably true, but because whenever the simple reading has an anomaly, it leaves it open for interpretation. That go beyond the simple meaning. It doesn't change the fact that the simple meaning means he met them at night,
right.
Or that even the night met them, as in like the night added to their bewilderment, maybe. But whenever there's an anomaly in the language, it leaves open for interpretation. So it doesn't negate the simple interpretation that it happened at night. Okay. So that was Rabbi Yochanan's interpretation. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Omar says, She'asa imay ma'isa laila, that night itself was part of the battle against the four kings. Now, where do we see elsewhere that night fights? Shnemar, as the verse reads, this is the Shofet Barak, I think you pronounce his name. Barak, yeah. Sorry, with Devora, that's correct. Both Devora, this is the famous Shiras Devora, Devorah's song after successful in the battle against Sisera, and she sings a whole song thanking Hashem for the success in the battle. Right? I think the Shir is Haftarah, right? When's Haftarah for Shir, this Shir is Devora? When is it? When is it? Oh, but when we say Az Yashir, Shabbos Shira, Perek Chelek, we sing the song in Haftarah as well. Okay? So in that Haftarah it reads, the verse reads, Min Hashemayim nilchamu kachavim, from the heavens, the stars waged battle. Min misiloisam, from their pathway, nilchamu im Sisera, they waged war with Sisera. So we see that with Barak and Devorah, the night, the stars waged battle. So too, with Avram, where it said the night met them, the night itself was part of the battle. What that means, I leave it to you. I mean, what this means that the stars fought them doesn't mean. Oftentimes we talk about the stars and the celestial bodies as divine passageways or passageways for the divine energy to enter this world. So maybe it means something to do with that. I don't know, but this is what the Gemara says. Okay. Reish Lakish comments. Reish Lakish is Rabbi Yochanan, right? There's two people speaking here, Rabbi Yochanan and Yitzchak Nafcha. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish are brother-in-laws / chavrusas / study partners. Famous duo. Their dramatic stories split up throughout the Gemara, but makes for a very compelling story when you put all the pieces together of how they met and how they spent their lives together, and then how they came to their end and how their children took after them and all the rest of that. Very fascinating story. But Reish Lakish says, Tava de Nafcha, I prefer the words of Nafcha, the smith, Midabai Nafcha, rather than the son of the smith. Okay. Yitzchak Nafcha, we mentioned before, is called Yitzchak Nafcha. Nafcha means a smith. So presumably Rabbi Yitzchak was a smith for a living. So Reish Lakish says, I prefer the words of the smith, Rabbi Yitzchak, who said that the night itself waged battle. The stars itself were part of the war, not some angel called Lila. And I prefer that rather than the son of Nafcha. Rabbi Yochanan is referred to as the son of Nafcha. Throughout the Gemara, is referred to as the son of Nafcha, Bar Nafcha. Now, Bar Nafcha is one of two things. Either, as Rashi points out, either his father was actually a blacksmith, which would mean Reish Lakish, his father-in-law, / Rabbi Yochanan's father, was a blacksmith. That's why it's called Rabbi Yochanan, son of the blacksmith, son of Nafcha. Or, oftentimes the word bar doesn't mean son of, but rather who carries the title of. That's often the case when you say bar. I'm trying to think of other examples.
Like a bar mitzvah.
Sorry? Yeah, bar mitzvah. Son of mitzvah, that's an obvious example. Doesn't mean you're literally the son of the mitzvah, but means you carry the title now of mitzvahs. So, Nafcha then, blacksmith, is not a reference to who Rabbi Yochanan's father was, but rather to Rabbi Yochanan himself. And that Rabbi Yochanan was famously beautiful. And therefore he was like smith, he was like a perfectly smith-faced. In fact, this could be further, if I'm not mistaken. So I read this a long time ago, but if I'm not mistaken, the way the Gemara describes Rabbi Yochanan's beauty is like this. A very specific description. He's like a silver goblet that was just recently taken out of the furnace, so it's still glowing red. Fill it up with red cherries, and then put around the rim green leaves. Put it half in the sun and half in the shade. That's how beautiful Rabbi Yochanan looked. So it seems like he had red hair. It seems like he didn't have a beard, just by nature. And the Gemara mentions elsewhere that he didn't have a beard, just by dint of birth. And he must have had red cheeks of some sort, because it's a glowing silver. So maybe this is a connection to the smith imagery, that he was called he was so beautiful as came out of a smith.
Well, smiths are often glowing because of the heat of the fire.
They themselves are glowing because
because they're always like red, because they're working over a hot fire to
right.
do the shoes and everything.
Oh, it's not just the
so maybe it's also
images they make, but they themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could be.
That would make sense. At any rate, so he was called Bar Nafcha, as the beautiful one.
He was the one that the Roman Emperor's daughter found also. Was that he the one that, and they took off his skin?
That's Rabbi Akiva.
Rabbi Gamliel.
Rabbi Akiva. No, they saved his face because he wanted his beauty.
No, that
No, it wasn't Rabbi Akiva.
Rabbi Akiva.
That was Rabbi Gamliel.
Rabbi Gamliel. Okay. Okay.
They wanted to preserve his face. Right.
Rabbi Akiva, right, he was also.
Rabbi Yochanan's beauty is a different story. It's part of Rish Lakish, how Rish Lakish met him. Rish Lakish was a famous leader of a gang of bandits, and he saw across the river what he thought was a beautiful woman, and he jumped across and was upset to see that it was Rabbi Yochanan instead of a beautiful woman. And it's Rabbi Yochanan told him, "My sister is more beautiful than me. You join me in studying Torah, I'll introduce you." And he did, and he married her, and that's how they became brother-in-laws, and that's how they became charusas. But there's another indication he didn't have a beard, because otherwise he would have recognized that this was a male.
Right.
Anyway, so Rish Lakish says, I prefer the words of Rabbi Yitzchak, the Nafcha, the blacksmith, rather than Bar Nafcha, the son of the blacksmith, the beautiful one, or the actual son of the blacksmith. Okay. Continuing along with the story of Avraham Avinu, who meets them at night, but the verse preceding that one, just before it says where he met them at night, the verse preceding that reads that Avraham heard about what happened with Lot, so he started to pursue them, and the verse concludes, Vayirdev ad Dan, and he ran until a place called Dan. You see the place? The line begins with the word ad, and then the next word is Dan. So he chased them to a place called Dan. And then the verse goes, and he met them at night, and this is where we have the discussion what Lila means. If Lila is an angel, if Lila means the stars themselves. So Rabbi Yochanan says, why is it significant that Avraham pursued these kings until Dan? So Rabbi Yochanan says, Kivin Sheba Eis Tzaddik, when that righteous one, Avraham Avinu, arrived at the place called Dan, Toshash Kaichai, his strength weakened, so he stopped there. Why? Because he saw that Bnei Bnanov, his descendants in future generations, Shasidin, that they will later Lavad Avedazara to serve idols, Bidan, in a place called Dan. Shenemar, as the verse reads, and I believe this is a description of was it Menashe?
This could be maybe Rabbi Ben Levi.
This is earlier on then. It's one of the kings of the north, which famously placed idols, and the idea was it wasn't just idols. He actually built semi-temples because he built semi-temples to idols because he didn't want people from his kingdom to go to the south and serve God in the temple of Jerusalem. That would make his kingdom weaker and lose his people. So he built alternatives to idols. And here's the verse describing that. Shneimar, as the verse reads, Vayasam es echad beiskel, he put one idol in a place called Beiskel. Another one, Nasam bedan, he placed in a place called Dan. So when Avraham Avinu arrived at that location, and he sensed that in the future time this place was going to be a place of his children sinning, he stopped. His power got weaker. So he right away he fought with the angel. He fought with the other kings there, as opposed to going further and perhaps losing on the grounds that his children would later sin. Yeah.
Hashem said to Lech Lecha, and he's going to find another spot of Avodah Zarah.
This is different. It's a little later in life. That Lech Lecha is much earlier in life. Okay. So, and the Gemara says further. Now, with respect to Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar, who was successful in destroying the Beis Hamikdash. Says the Gemara, so too that wicked one, Nebuchadnezzar, like Nizgaber, was only became successful over the Jewish people when he arrived at the same location done. So the same location that Avram had to stop because he might not be successful is the same location which caused success to our enemies. Nebuchadnezzar, again, you see this pattern of how history connects and reconnects, and all in the context of the world's progression towards Mashiach's coming. That's the whole context of the overarching story of this Gemara. So where do we see that? Because the verse says, Shneimar, the verse reads, Midan, when they arrived at Dan, Nishma Nichras Susov, the snorting of the horses were heard. Like when the horses come into battle, you hear their snorting. I think that's what's called. What's it called? Yeah. So you heard them in Dan. as if to say, now we heard their wrath. So when he arrived and done, that's when the success began. In the same place where Avraham stopped because he didn't want to fight, knowing that this was a place of sin, a place of negativity. Okay. This is the end of the comment with respect to the angel and Avraham. And because it introduced Nebuchadnezzar, it's going to get back to the story of Nebuchadnezzar and his predecessors and his successors later. But in the meantime, the Gemara interjects with the following statement, and how this connects to the Gemara before and after is a little bit unclear, and Rashi himself gives two versions, and then there are other versions in the commentaries. But let's read the statement. Amr Rabbi Zera says, Afagav Deshalach Yehuda ben Beseira. Even though Yehuda ben Beseira sent the following statement from Nitzivim. Yehuda ben Beseira is, in the broad term, you can say he's a Tana, because he's quoted in the Mishnah, but he's really treated much before the Mishnaic age, in a certain sense. He's part of the beginning of the generation of what's called Zugos, which is the pre-Tanaic age, which were led by singular leaders of the Hillelayan line for the most part. Before that, there were generations of the Bnei B'Seir were the end. The Bnei B'Seir were the end of the.
They were Tom Philip, because also covered from them.
Right, so they were the end of. Sorry, they're the end of the Zugos, not the beginning of the Zugos. I'm sorry, they're the end of the Zugos, not the beginning of the Zugos. So before the Mishnaic age, which were the Jewish leaders were singular leaders called Nasiim, princes, most of whom are from the Hillelayan line. Before that, there were pairs, Zugos. That's what they're called, Zugos, which is pairs that led the Jewish people. You can see them in Perek Chelek, the beginning, where it goes through the generations till Anshik Knesset Gdola. You'll see there that the Mishnah is built on generation. Perek Chelek is built on generational, right? Each person speaking says he learned from the person before him, and he used to say he learned from the person before him, and he used to say. But at the beginning it says Kiblu Mehem. They learned from them, because there's a few generations of pairs. Shmai and Avtalion learned from Yeshua and Prach and Tayar Bailey, and those two learned from those two, learned from those two, learned from those two. So Yehuda, the sons of Beseira, Yehuda ben Beseira being one of them, were at the end of these pairs, and then from them went to Hillel, transferring to the Mishnaic age in its more commonly known names that we hear in the Mishnah. So Gamliel, Rishum, and then later Rabbi Yehuda and that generation. Okay, so this Yehuda ben Beseira sent the message from Nitzivim, and the message was as follows. He gave three recommendations. They're not halachas necessarily, but they're recommendations. He says, Hizaru, number one, be careful, or I recommend kind of, maybe it is a halacha, but it's the wording seems more like it's a recommendation, as in like what he thinks you should be doing. Hizaru, be careful, as in be respectful. V'zaken of an elder, sheshachach Talmud, who forgot his Torah, so he doesn't currently have any Torah, because he forgot it. But machmas oinsoi, he forgot it because it wasn't his fault. He got older, he's forgetting things. But he once had Torah, and therefore still keep the honor that he deserves. Parenthetically, there's a famous story. This is not exactly the same thing, but there's a famous Hasidic individual named Michal der Bliner, or Michal der Alter, Michal the old one, the elder. And his position was he was hired as a mashpia, as a mentor in the yeshiva in Tzemach Tzimim. And at one point he was getting older and he couldn't give classes anymore. So the yeshiva wanted to save money on a salary, and they wanted to let him go. He can't give his classes anymore like he used to. And the previous Rebbe insisted that he stay on the payroll. Why? Let the younger boys see an elder chassid daven. That's it. So he was paid to show up and to daven and to pray and just to be and I don't know if it's the exact same thing, but when I was in yeshiva in Kfar Chabad, there was an elder chassid named Rabbi Monka Gruzman. That's what he went by. He had a face like a tzaddik. He used to daven every day for hours. On Shabbos, you're able to see him daven. And Mamish had a face like a tzaddik. And he didn't give a class. He would just sit, and people would watch him learn, and watch him. I don't remember ever giving a class. He used to talk one-on-one with the boys, but anyway, it's kind of a similar statement. Be careful with the honoring an elder, even if he forgot his Torah study, because he once had Torah study. Okay. That was recommendation number one from Yehuda ben Beseira. Recommendation number two is Vizo beviridin Rabbi Yehuda. be careful, be scrupulous with respect to vered. It's a certain pipe in an animal, like Rabbi Huda. So what this is referencing is that in order for slaughter to be kosher, you only have to slaughter two pipes in the animal. One's the windpipe and the esophagus, I think is the other one, right? And then the vered is a third pipe that's there. I don't know what it's called. Maybe it has the name here. Sorry? No, it's a certain name. I'll tell you in a second here. The jugular veins. That's it. And Rabbi Huda is of the view that you have to, when it comes to chickens, for whatever reason, he says, Rashi explains the reason there, you have to actually slaughter all three of them. So it's not actually halacha, but Rabbi Huda ben Beseira is telling them to follow Rabbi Huda's view in that regard, to draw the blood out because right, usually, till today it's a somewhat of a contentious issue of how you salt chickens, whether you salt the inside or the outside, both sides, you have to cut it open, not cut it open. But if you're not cutting the chicken open and you're not salting all sides of the chicken, especially if you're just going to grill it. Halacha is if you slaughter an animal and you put it right onto the grill, you don't need to salt it to the same degree you would salt if you're cooking, because when you're grilling, the blood comes out anyway, and the salting is to get the blood, to draw the blood out. Now if you're going to take a chicken, slaughter it and put it right on the grill without salting it, especially since you're not cutting it open and salting the inside, Rabbi Huda says you should cut the jugular veins so that the blood drains from there as well. So Rabbi Beseira is telling them to do that as well. So that's recommendation number 2. Recommendation number 3, V'yizoru b'bnei ha'aretz shemehen teitze Torah. Be respectful of children of ignoramuses from whom Torah is being taught. In other words, don't worry about the yichus. If this person earned his way by learning Torah, be respectful of him. So this was the statement that these are the 3 recommendations of Rabbi Beseira. Now it was introduced by Rabbi Zeda, who said, even though this is what Rabbi Beseira said, nevertheless comes the following: nevertheless inform them of this. End statement from Rabbi Zeda. Now what does Rabbi Zeda mean when he says this? Inform them of this. Inform them of what? What I'm about to tell you, or what I just told you? And what is the connection between what I just told you, or what I'm about to tell you, to these statements? Or specifically to these children of the ignoramuses who are themselves scholars, what are we informing them? So there are 2 different versions. Good day. There are different versions to this. So I'll give you 2 of Rashi's versions. Either it means the next thing. Now the next thing which follows is how God rewards Nebuchadnezzar for one small good thing he did. And God gives him a major reward for one thing he did. And therefore, what you're telling these children of ignoramuses is, it's true, you earned your space by Torah study, but don't get so conceit in your success. You should know there must be some positive thing that your ancestors did, even though they are ignoramuses, and for that, God's rewarding them and making you a scholar. So don't get so conceited and like, oh, look at me, I earned my Torah scholarship. One understanding of what Rabbi Zera means when he says, even though this is what Rabbi Zera said, nevertheless remember this. One version. Another version is, it's talking about the preceding Gemara. Right? We're way back. Right. You tell the Gemara can tell us later. I don't know why it says le'il. Just say le'kamon. Right? Rashi says le'kamon.
Well, it means le'il. He mentioned
right.
The 2 sons of
anyway, mentioned before that Sanhedrin had children who were terrible people and killed their father. But the Gemara can tell us later that Sanhedrin had grandchildren who studied Torah. So we're telling these people who themselves became Torah studies, even their scholars, even though their parents were ignoramuses, should know that it's you who got the Torah study. We're not honoring you because of your parents. So there's actually 2 different versions that are exactly the opposite. One is, don't get too conceited in your accomplishments in Torah study. There must be some merit your forefathers had, and that's why God's rewarding you. On the flip side, we're saying the exact reverse. That the fact that we're honoring you is not because your ancestors were any good. You should know that they were no good. We're honoring you because of what you earned. And the truth is that the attitude has to be a combination of both. A person has to know what they've accomplished. A person also has to know what they've accomplished. It's a gift. This is the Hasidic recipe for anava, for humility. The Hasidic understanding of humility is not that one denies who they are. In Hasidic thought, that's just a liar, just not honest. Someone who's intelligent and says, "Oh, I'm not intelligent," because he's trying to be humble. That's not humility. That's lying. And in fact,
you're not allowed to
belittle yourself. Yeah. In fact, that kind of humility actually feeds the ego. How so? Because a person says to himself, I know I'm smart, but I'm so humble, I'm telling other people that I'm not smart. It just feeds into your own narcissism. So what's the true humility? Someone who says, "Look, I know I've accomplished. I know I've learned. I know who I am." Like the second version here. You should know that you earned your scholarship. But the fact that you earned your scholarship is itself a gift from heaven. Remembering the first version here. So you know your gifts. You know who your gifts are. You know what your gifts are. You know your accomplishments. You know your value. But you acknowledge that your value and your gifts are all from Hashem, a gift from Hashem. And like this, Chassidus explains how Moshe Rabbeinu was Ana b'kol adam. How Moshe Rabbeinu was humble before every single man. How's it possible? Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know that he talked to God face to face like nobody else in the world. There's no prophet who ever rose like him or ever will rise like him. He brought Torah from heaven. He split the sea. I mean, humble before every single person in the world. I mean, as he goes and he meets the ignoramus who never opened the Jewish book and doesn't know how to read Hebrew, and he's humble before him too. That's what the verse says. How is that possible? So Chassidus explains, because Moshe Rabbeinu acknowledged that everything he had is a gift from Hashem, he could look at the simplest of the person and say, "Well, had you got my gifts, maybe you do a better job than me." So here you have Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't deny who he is, knows who he is, knows his accomplishments, knows his value, knows his virtue, and yet can still be humble even before the lowest of people, because he can look at that person and say, "If you had my gifts, who's to say you wouldn't do a better job than me?" And this is a combination of these two versions and understanding of Zeta. You tell a person who's a scholar whose parents are ignoramus. You tell them on the one hand, "Look, I'm not honoring your parents, I'm honoring you because you earned your keep." But on the other hand, we're telling him, you should know the fact that you were able to earn your keep is because your forefathers had some merit that God's rewarding you. Right. So it's true you earned your place. It's true you earned your Torah study. But remember that even the fact that you earned it is itself a gift from heaven for whatever reason heaven deemed it fit to reward you in such a fashion. Okay, God willing, tomorrow we get to the wonderful story of the reward, or what's that good thing Nebuchadnezzar did that made his children be Torah scholars? What's the one good thing that Nebuchadnezzar did? And this is before he even becomes king, and that's when we're introduced to his predecessors. And likewise, we get into a little bit of a discussion of our incapability of understanding God's system of reward and punishment. That's what's going to come as well in the Gemara tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, everybody.